I hated not being able to do anything but wait on other people. I had always been a man who took point on everything, and this waiting was killing me. Sometime later, I heard a knock at the door. Grabbing my pistol and cane, I got off the bed and went for the door. "Who's there?" I called out. "Oscar Warren," a man's voice said from the other side. I looked through the peephole and saw him holding up his credentials. "Proby? Is that really you?" "That's Special Agent Proby to you, Mr. Jacobs," Oscar said good-naturedly. I cracked the door and saw his smiling face. He was a bit older than the last time I saw him, but he still looked in good shape. I opened the door and let him come in. "Good to see you, Oscar," I said, lowering the pistol. "Good to see you as well, you old dog," he laughed. "I hope you remember how to make that thing safe." I chuckled at that. "I think I can manage. Looks like they'll make anyone a special agent these days," I joked. "Well, technically, I'm actually a deputy assistant special agent in charge, but I'm okay with just special agent." "So, I hear you're a big-time executive these days." "Yeah, so they tell me," I quipped. "So, what brings you all the way out here from Fort Apache?" "You remember the name Pat Witherspoon? That's a name I hadn't heard in ages. You know, she was the one who turned my first wife, the one who told me what my punishment would be if I ever cheated on Renee. She died in my custody when Mona Larson played her little Jedi mind trick. All these years I never knew she was Jake Green's ex-wife. And here you are, married to her daughter." "I had no idea," I told him. "No, of course you didn't. None of us knew her family ties at the time," Oscar said. "We ended up cremating her body after the autopsy. No one would even claim her body. Kinda sad, don't you think? Given who she was associated with, all the pain and suffering she caused." "No, I don't. As far as I'm concerned, she was the one who killed Renee with her drugs and her games," Oscar said bitterly. "And I still have a hospital full of her victims. Men who will probably never recover from the abuse and torture Pat's goons inflicted on them. You were there, Mike. You saw your share. Got shot by one of them, remember?" "I'll never forget," I said quietly. "Do you think her daughter is following in her footsteps?" Oscar asked. "I don't know. She doesn't exactly fit the profile. A lot of the old profiles don't work anymore, Mike. It's a whole new ball game these days. They don't even call themselves MMAs. They prefer to use terms like sisterhood. You ever hear Samantha or her lawyer use that phrase?" "No, never," I answered. "Let me know if you do, okay?" Oscar pleaded. "Sure," I said. "Like I said, Samantha doesn't exactly fit the old profiles. But that lawyer of hers, Allison Cartwright, she definitely could." "Cartwright? I don't recall that name," Oscar mused. "Tell you what I'll do. I'll have Wiseman and his research team do a deep dive, see what they come up with." "He's still working for the task force?" "Oh yeah," Oscar exclaimed. "That is when he and his wife aren't scaring the shit out of wannabe Lotharios. I think Amy's been hit on by just about every manager in that company she works for." I chuckled at that. I've met Ron Wiseman before and watched him and his wife use their wheel of death. He even showed me a few tricks with his knives. To quote Mr. T, "I pitied the fools who tried to hit on Amy." "So, what's going on? Anything new since I spoke with your boss?" Oscar asked, and I filled him in on what I had learned since this morning. He seemed especially interested when I told him about the photos. "I can't help but wonder if maybe this Cartwright has done this to others besides you and Morrison," Oscar said. "I'll pass that on to Wiseman. Definitely sounds like a crime or two has been committed here. May not rise to the level of task force involvement, but I certainly think someone's going to jail. I'll get Wiseman on it right away and let you know what he finds." "Thanks, Oscar. I appreciate it a bunch," I said. "What are friends for?" Oscar responded with a smile. "Well, I'd better get back. Rita's making a pot roast and it'll be but if I'm not home in time for dinner." "That's right. You married the boss daughter. I thought you'd gained a few pounds since the last time I saw you. How are things going?" "Wonderful," Oscar said. "I haven't been this happy in years." "Well, you give her and the kids my best," I told him. "I'll do that, Mike, thanks," Oscar said as he stood up. "No, thank you, my friend," I told him as we shook hands. I walked him to the door, and we said our final goodbyes. I looked at the time and decided to grab some dinner. So I grabbed my cane and went to the restaurant downstairs. After a tasty filet mignon, I bought a cigar from the gift shop, sat out by the pool with an after-dinner drink, and relaxed. I returned to my room a couple hours later, feeling somewhat relaxed. After looking at the time, I figured Samantha would be home. So I washed up, booted my laptop, and logged into my home surveillance system. Sam had just walked into the house with Alan and Allison. "So, what's so important that you couldn't tell me at the office?" Samantha asked Allison. I got a report from the PI. Your husband went to see Alice Hawkins this morning, Allison told her. So? He went to see a lawyer. We knew he would. You don't understand, Samantha. Alice is a shark, and the first thing she's going to do is get that restraining order reversed. And if I know her, she'll be looking for blood. There's more. Mike spoke to your ex-husband early this afternoon, Allison said. I saw Samantha's face turn white. What do you think Alvin told him? Samantha asked, now panicked. My guess is everything, Allison said. And if your husband puts it together, we could be in big trouble. There's more. I spoke to my contact, and she tells me Mike served on something called the Homefront Security Task Force. A real badass. He wasn't kidding when he told your father he killed people, she added, causing Samantha to shrink back. In fact, he received several medals for his work, Allison continued. I also heard from the PI that he was visited today by one of his old colleagues, someone named Oscar Warren. I don't know what they talked about, but I can make an educated guess. Again, why is that so important? Samantha asked, still confused. If your husband has the resources of a federal agency that specializes in family disputes behind him, we're royally screwed, Allison said. Maybe now is the time to set Mike up, Alan said. I still have that drive. Lots of juicy stuff on here. Can you imagine what'll happen when the authorities learn that a former federal agent has a computer full of illegal spicy videos? Forget it, Alan, Allison said. It's too late to plant anything on his hard drive now. He hasn't had access to his computer for nearly 24 hours. A forensic tech could spot that in a minute. All right, then I'll email it to him, Alan said. That might work, Allison said, but you need to be very careful. Make sure he can't track it back to your computer. What about the account? Samantha asked. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars in that account. I'll deal with that, Allison said. What if all this doesn't work? Samantha asked, fear etched in her voice. There's too much at stake here. If this doesn't work, and if we can't bring Mike to heel, we'll have no choice but to make sure he has an accident. One he never wakes up from, Allison told her firmly. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Samantha slowly nodded her head, understanding the implication of Allison's statement. And do you understand, Alan? Yeah, I get it, he told her. I understood as well. The three of them intended to kill me if all else failed. The woman I had pledged my life and my love to had just agreed to see me dead, all for the love of money. She, of all people, should have known that I don't like to lose an argument. And I sure as hell wasn't about to lose this one. I pulled out my phone and made my first call to Ryan Harper, an old friend of mine in the FBI. Special Agent Harper, he said when he answered. Ryan, this is Mike Jacobs, I said. How'd you like an exclusive? Mike, you crusty old dog. I was just thinking about you, Ryan said. What's this exclusive you have for me? Conspiracy to commit murder and extortion. For starters, I told him. Oh yeah? Who's the victim? Me. You? Are you sure of this? Ryan asked, shocked. Absolutely, I told him. I have them on video. You want me to send it to you? Send it to me now, and I'll call Sheriff Pratt. We're old buddies from way back. You have my email address, right? I have it in my contact list. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that, I said as I prepared to send the video clip. After I formatted the email, I hit send. It's on its way to you now. I see it, Ryan responded a few moments later. I could hear the muffled sound of the video playing through my phone. Shit, I can't believe Samantha would do that to you. Hang on, let me call the sheriff. I heard him talking to someone on another phone for a few minutes, then he returned. Okay, Sheriff Pratt is sending someone to your place now. What the hell's going on? Ryan listened quietly as I relayed the events of the last couple days. I heard him whistle when I finished. Damn, that's just cold-blooded, he exclaimed. I thought so, I told him. Where are you now? Are you safe? Do I need to send someone to cover you? Ryan asked, concerned. I gave him my location and assured him I would be all right. He responded when I finished. Well, this doesn't look like a federal case, at least not yet. But if you need anything, give me a call. You hear me, Mike? I got it. But thanks again, Ryan. I appreciate it. We ended the call, and I looked at my laptop to see the three conspirators still talking. What about the ex? Do we kill him too? Alan asked. No, at least not yet. It would look too suspicious for two of Samantha's husbands to be killed so soon. Tomorrow, I'll start moving the funds we've been collecting from him and the others to an offshore account. Once that's finished, we'll reevaluate Alvin's usefulness. So, I thought, there are other victims. This should prove to be interesting. You sound like you've done this before, Alan said. Allison smirked before responding. Let's just say this isn't exactly my first rodeo, she quipped. I watched them chatter on for about a half hour, then saw the reflection of flashing lights outside. I smiled, knowing their little plot was about to get a monkey wrench thrown into it. A few moments later, I heard a knocking at the door. Sheriff's Department. Open up, I heard a man's voice call out. Samantha. Allison and Alan looked at each other, confused. You'd better open the door, Allison told Samantha. Sam followed Allison's direction and opened the door. Yes? Samantha asked. Samantha Jacobs? The deputy asked. That's me, Samantha said. Deputy Smith. This is Deputy Jones. May we come inside, please? Of course, Deputy, Samantha said. Two deputies entered the front room, one male and one female. Alan Williams? Allison Cartwright? Smith asked. The other two nodded their heads. We're here to take you three into custody. You're under arrest. Turn around, hands behind your back. Under arrest? For what? Allison asked. According to the warrant, conspiracy to commit murder and extortion, Smith said. Sam, Allison and Alan looked at each other confused as Smith read their Miranda rights. How? Shut up, Alan, Allison hissed. Say nothing. To no one. Got it. Your husband must have planted some bugs in the house, Alan told Samantha. Did you know about that? No, I didn't, Samantha said. Shut up, both of you, Allison commanded. Say nothing. When we get to the county jail, I'll arrange for our representation. You have the right to remain silent, so use it. The deputies finished their work and escorted the three conspirators out of my house. The video ended when the door closed. I grabbed my phone and placed my second call, this time to Alice Hawkins, my lawyer. What's happened, Mike? Why are you calling me after hours? I just wanted to let you know Sam and her two conspirators have been arrested, I answered. Arrested? For what? Conspiracy to commit murder and extortion. I have their plot captured on video, I told Alice. Oh my God, Alice exclaimed. Can you get me a copy of that video? Already on it, I said as I prepared to email the video. Well, this will certainly help out when I go to see Judge Banks about the restraining order, Alice told me. Would that be Judge Kenneth Banks? I asked. One and the same. Why? Do you know him? I ran an intervention on his behalf about 10 years ago, I explained. Intervention was the term we used in the task force for helping targeted husbands. Before he became a judge, I added. Couldn't that be seen as a conflict of interest? Have you done anything on his behalf since then? Alice asked. No, I told her. Then it shouldn't be an issue. Chances are he may not even remember your name, Alice said. Maybe. I doubt that he forgot the intervention, though. Well, don't worry about it. If he asks, then I'll tell him. Otherwise, we won't say anything, she told me. When do you go before him? I asked Alice. Tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock. I also have a motion to unfreeze your accounts along with a demand that Samantha return at least 35% of everything she took. I'll be arguing those in front of Judge Banks at that time. Hopefully, with Samantha in custody, I'll have good news for you by this time tomorrow. I look forward to that, I told Alice. As do I. Get a good night's sleep, Mike. I'll talk to you tomorrow. We ended the call and I placed my third call of the evening, this time to Wilson Langley, Samantha's boss. He also happened to be Allison and Alan's boss as well. Since I was responsible for getting Langley's business, I had his personal cell number in my contacts. I only had reason to call him on this number once since he signed on with ISS. Langley, the older man, answered after the first ring. Mr. Langley, this is Mike Jacobs, ISS. How are you this evening, sir? I was enjoying a nice steak dinner with some friends, he said. I could hear the background noise indicating he was probably at the country club, where Pop often ate. What can I do for you, Mr. Jacobs? Is there a problem with the security at my office building? None that I'm aware of, Mr. Langley, but there is a problem with 3 of your employees. Oh, what kind of problem? A legal one. They've been arrested, I told him. They're on their way to the county jail as we speak. What? Langley hissed. I could tell he covered the phone as he spoke to his dinner guests. Then he turned his attention back to me. Hang on, let me go somewhere a bit quieter. I could hear him leave the table and waited for him to speak, which only took a few moments. What's going on, Mr. Jacobs? As you know, my wife, Samantha, your executive assistant, has filed divorce papers against me, I explained. Yes, I'm aware of that. I have video of her, Alan Williams and Allison Cartwright, plotting to murder me. I also have evidence of them conspiring to extort me as well, I told him calmly. Given our business relationship, I felt I owed it to you to let you know. Damn, he spit. You say you have proof of this? Yes, sir, I have video, taken in my own home. I have reason to believe there's more to the story and I intend to get to the bottom of this. Do you suspect me or my firm of any illegalities? Langley asked quietly. I have no direct evidence of that, Mr. Langley. Not at this time. But all three of the perps in this case do work for you. I told him calmly. Yes, so it seems. At least for the moment. But everyone is entitled to a defense, Mr. Jacobs. They'll get their day in court just like everyone else. And if it turns out your allegations are true, then I'll fire them. Is that sufficient? He asked. Yes, that will suffice, Mr. Langley, I said. Good. And thank you for bringing this to my attention, Mr. Jacobs. You're welcome, I said, ending the call. There was one more call to make. I looked at the information Terry gave me about Alan Williams and made my next move. I dialed the New York number for Alan and Rhonda Williams, hoping Alan's wife would answer the phone. I heard a woman's voice after 2 rings. Williams' residence, she said. I'd like to speak with Rhonda Williams, please, I said. This is she, the woman replied. Mrs. Williams, my name is Mike Jacobs. I have some bad news regarding your husband, Alan. I heard her sigh before speaking. What's my husband done now? She asked quietly. Your husband has been sleeping with my wife, I told her. You have ironclad proof of this? I have video of them together. Damn him, Rhonda hissed. I warned him if this happened again. We were through. There's more, Mrs. Williams, I said. Please call me Rhonda, she said. You say there's more? Yes, Rhonda. And please call me Mike. Your husband has been arrested for conspiracy to commit murder and extortion. I have a feeling more charges will be forthcoming. He and his 2 conspirators are being taken to the county jail even now, I said. Oh my God, Rhonda whispered sadly. I'm really very sorry about all this. It's not your fault, Rhonda. He made his choices. Now he'll have to live with them. Yes, of course. You're right. You say you have evidence. Can you send that to me, please? Of course, I told her. Rhonda gave me her personal email address, and I added it to my contacts. I'll send you what I have as soon as we get off the phone. Again, I'm sorry about this. Like you said, Mike, it's not your fault. Alan made his bed. Now he'll have to lie in it. Thank you for letting me know, Rhonda said sadly. I felt bad for her and her children. I knew the media shitstorm they would have to deal with as a result of Alan's actions. We ended the call and I followed through with my promise. I sent her all the videos I had involving Alan with a short note of condolence. I had one more call to make, and I knew this would be the hardest. Picking up my phone, I called Pop, who answered after the second ring. Sam's been arrested, I said quietly. Yes, I know. She called me from the county jail, Pop said. I could hear the sadness in his voice. She says they're charging her with conspiracy to commit murder. Is it true? I'm afraid it is, Pop, I responded. I have it on video. I can't believe she would go along with something like that, Pop sighed. She did, Pop. Anyway, it's in the hands of the authorities now. Who else knows? Pop asked. Her boss, Wilson Langley. I just told him a few minutes ago. I also spoke to Alan Williams' wife in New York. And my lawyer. You know this is gonna cause a media shit show, Pop said. Probably, I said. Shit like this usually does. Pop chuckled at that. We'll get through it, Pop finally said. Thanks for letting me know. You're welcome, I responded. I felt bad for the old guy, realizing that he wasn't responsible for what his daughter had done. Well, I'd best get going, Pop finally said. Let me know if you hear anything. All right, Pop. Have a good evening. Give my best to Mom, I said before ending the call. Looking out the sliding glass doors that led to the balcony, I saw the sun had gone down and observed the twinkling lights of the city. I felt somewhat relieved at the events of the day and wanted to do something. Anything. I felt like checking out and going back to my home, but remembered the restraining order was still in effect. I would not be surprised if Allison's private investigators were watching to see if I would try to sneak back once the conspirators had been taken away. Feeling a bout of cabin fever, I simply had to get out of that room before I went nuts. So I went downstairs, bought another cigar and planted myself by the pool to enjoy the cool night air, a drink, and a smoke. After a couple hours, I came back to the room, crawled under the covers and slept like a baby. I woke up later than usual the following morning, so I got up, showered, shaved, and did my normal business before going downstairs for some breakfast. I didn't have anything on my plate for the day, other than waiting for news from Alice, so I took a nice, leisurely stroll around the downtown area before going back to my room. The knock came after I had only been back a few moments. Not expecting anyone to show up, I grabbed my pistol and peered through the peephole. I saw two men in cheap suits, badges on their belts. "Who is it?" I queried. "Police department, Mr. Jacobs. We'd like a word, please," I heard a man respond. "Hold your credentials up so I can see them," I demanded. "Not just your badges." They looked at each other, shrugged their shoulders, and held up their official police credentials. Reading their box tops, I learned they were Detectives Johnson and Caraway. I had met Johnson a few years back at a fundraiser supporting widows and orphans of officers killed in the line of duty. I had never personally met Caraway, but I knew of his reputation. I decided to take a chance they were the real deal and holstered my weapon. "Just a second," I told them. Cracking the door open, I surveyed the hall in both directions, then invited them inside. "Just so you know, there is a loaded weapon in the room," I told them. "It's holstered and has been rendered safe." "We expected as much, Mr. Jacobs," one of the detectives said. "We know you're a former federal agent, and we also know you have a permit to carry. We just have a few questions regarding your wife and a couple of her colleagues." "All right, come on in. Care for some coffee?" "Sure. Black, please," Detective Johnson said. Caraway echoed his statement, so I poured them each a cup of the hot black brew. They took a tentative sip before curling their lips in disgust. "Damn, you call this shit coffee?" Caraway asked. "That's what it says on the package," I told him. "Tastes fine to me." "Yeah, you're a former Fed, all right," Johnson quipped with a wry smile. I invited them to take a seat before sitting on the bed. "So, what can I do for the city's finest?" I asked. "We're here about the charges against your wife, Samantha Jacobs, her attorney, Allison Cartwright, and her colleague, Alan Williams," Johnson said. "I figured that," I said half-jokingly. "What do you want to know?" "We understand that Mrs. Jacobs has filed a petition for divorce against you. Claims adultery. She insists this is all a big misunderstanding. Says you called in the report out of revenge," Caraway stated, looking at his notebook. "I take it you haven't seen the video," I responded. Both of them looked at me, surprised. Apparently, they hadn't seen the video. I take it that's a no. Am I right? "We're not aware of any video," Johnson said. "Well, take a look at this, gentlemen. I'd offer you some popcorn, but I'm fresh out at the moment," I joked. I pulled up the video on my laptop and showed it to the detectives. They watched, stunned, as the three conspirators so glibly discussed murdering me if I didn't go along with their plot. They also took note of Alan's desire to load up my computer with something. "Any idea what's on that little thumb drive Williams has?" Johnson asked. "Probably illegal spicy videos," I told him. "Since Williams had it on him when he was arrested, you can probably find it at the county jail with the rest of his things." "We'll need to go check it out," Caraway told Johnson, who instantly agreed. "Can you get us a copy of all the videos you have of them?" Johnson asked me. "Sure," I replied. "I'll give you a copy of everything I have, including the video of the conversation I had with Cartwright at Luigi's." "Thanks. That would be a big help," Johnson said, handing me a thumb drive. I copied everything over and handed the drive back. "When is the arraignment?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., Johnson said. "In fact, the DA asked us to extend an invitation to you, since he might have to ask you a couple questions." "I'll be there," I told him. "Just one suggestion. You might want to look deeper into Cartwright. I suspect this isn't the first time she's tried something like this." "What makes you say that?" Caraway asked. "I spoke with Alvin Morrison, Samantha's first husband. Cartwright pulled the same trick with him. If you like, I'll give you Morrison's contact information." "Please do," Johnson said. The two detectives looked at each other as I wrote out Alvin's information. I also showed them the photos Allison used in both divorce cases. "Interesting," Caraway said. "Indeed," Johnson acknowledged. "All right, Mr. Jacobs, we'll talk to this Morrison character, see what he says. Thank you for your cooperation." "My pleasure," I told him. "Just one last thing, Mr. Jacobs. Consider it a word to the wise. I know of your reputation. You're not a federal agent anymore. Pulling a weapon on an officer of the court isn't exactly the smartest move to make, no matter how justified you felt. Leave this to us. We'll take care of things from here. Got it?" "I got it, Detective Johnson," I said with a smile. We all shook hands and I walked them to the door. Seeing that it was time for lunch, I ordered a sandwich from room service and watched some television as I ate. Alice called me later that afternoon to let me know that Judge Banks not only rescinded the restraining order, he also released the freeze on my accounts and ordered Samantha to return 30% of all the money she had taken. He's also referring Cartwright to the bar and the state attorney's office for her unethical actions, Alice said. You have been busy, I told her. I'm just getting warmed up, cowboy, Alice responded with a slight chuckle. I plan to file your response and divorce papers tomorrow. The shit is about to hit the fan. So, what now? I asked. I'll take care of getting the funds from Samantha. You work on that checklist I gave you, Alice said. That should take you the rest of the afternoon. Plan on moving back into your house tomorrow morning. Actually, I'd like to move back in today, I said. I need to change the locks and exorcise Samantha from my house. I've been invited by the DA to Samantha's arraignment tomorrow morning. Are you going to be there? Not unless you need me there, Alice replied. If they release any of them on bail, I'll need a restraining order, I told her. From what I've heard, the DA is going to recommend they be held until their trial, Alice said. But there's no telling what the judge will do. All right, I'll be there, just in case. Thanks, I said. After ending the call to Alice, I called Pop. Hey boy, how are things in your world? The older man asked in his usual salty manner. Doing better, Pop. Thanks for asking. Listen, the restraining order has been lifted, and I intend to be back at the house tonight. You think you can get some of your people over there to get Samantha's stuff out? Yeah, I can do that, son, he said. You think she's gonna be out on bail soon? Not from what I've heard, Pop, but you never know with some of these judges. Ain't that a fact? Pop hissed. What time you want the truck there? I'd say about 4:30. Shouldn't take too long to toss her crap into some garbage bags. Pop chuckled at that. You're a real class act, you know that, Mike? He jokingly asked. I learned from the best, Pop, I joked back. Yeah, you did. And don't forget that. We both laughed at that. All right, I'll have some people over about 4 o'clock. Let me know how the arraignment goes. I will, I promised. We ended the call, and I headed to the bank to make the necessary changes to my accounts there. Then I went to the office and took care of things with HR. While there, I checked in with my boss, Jack Iverson. How are things going? He asked. Progressing, I said. Got the restraining order lifted and the bank account unfrozen. Samantha and her conspirators were arrested last night. Arrested? Jack asked, shocked. Yeah, conspiracy to commit murder, extortion. I hear there may be other charges pending. The arraignment is tomorrow morning. And the DA wants you there? Yes, he may call on me. I don't know yet. I hope it works out, Jack said. You moving back home today? That's my plan. Let me know how everything goes, Jack said. I will, I told him before taking my leave. I went back to the hotel and checked out, then drove home. Home. My castle. My refuge from the shit show known as life. I pulled into the garage, closed the garage door, and headed for the door that led to my kitchen. Before going inside, though, I drew my pistol. I didn't think there would be any nasty surprises waiting for me, but I wasn't about to take any chances. I carefully went inside and turned off the security alarm. The place seemed dark and quiet. Too dark and a bit too quiet, to be honest. The only sounds in the place came from the tall antique grandfather clock in the living room. I carefully examined the place to make sure no one was waiting for me. Finally convinced the place was secure, I holstered my weapon and carefully took my things upstairs and put them away before taking a shower and changing into something a bit more casual. Right at 4 p.m., I heard a large truck pull into my driveway. Looking out the window, I saw 3 men climb out and come to the door. I let them inside and handed them a box of large 30-gallon plastic trash bags and showed them the way to Samantha's closet. One of the men began put her clothes into bags, while another emptied her drawers and her toiletries in another. I showed the third man around the place and pointed out the sticks of furniture, pots, pans, dishes, CDs, and various trinkets Samantha brought from her condo. Once they were busy exorcising Samantha's crap from the place, I unlocked my office door and inspected everything inside. All looked to be in good order, so I fired up my whole house stereo. Soon, the unique sounds of classic Tull filled the house. Yeah, I was home. Deal with it, pigs, I thought. I pulled out my phone and called a locksmith ISS recommended. I realized the late hour and offered to pay extra for the man's services. He reluctantly agreed and said he would be right over. The last thing I wanted, or needed, was Samantha or her conspirators having access to my house in the event they were released on bail. The locksmith arrived a half hour later and went to work. A couple hours later, the 3 men reported that they were finished. By then, the locksmith had changed all the locks on the doors and was happily on his merry way with a small wad of cash. I went through the place with the 3 men Pop sent over to make sure they got everything. What about the pictures on the wall? The man I presumed was the lead asked, pointing at the various photos of Samantha and I that dotted the place. Nah, I told him. I need kindling to start my fireplace tonight. They all laughed at that. By the way, could you do me a favor, please? What's that, Mr. Jacobs? First off, call me Mike. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind taking the mattress off the bed in the master bedroom. What do you want us to do with it? The lead asked. Maybe toss it in the dump, burn it, whatever. I don't care. I don't want it. I figured I would sleep in the guest bedroom and order a new mattress tomorrow. There was no way I was going to sleep on the mattress Samantha soiled with her infidelity. Sure, I understand, Mike, the lead said. Come on, give me a hand, he said to the other two men. Thanks, I appreciate it, I told him. They maneuvered the old mattress down the staircase and tossed it unceremoniously in the back of the truck. I thanked them for their work and gave them each a $100 bill. What the hell, I thought. They worked hard and deserved a little extra. We said our goodbyes, and I watched as they left with Samantha's crap. Turning back to the interior of the house, I took in the empty spots that had once been occupied by Samantha's things. Oh well, I thought. This too shall pass. Tired and a bit hungry, I ordered some lasagna from Luigi's. The lady who took my order said it would take about an hour for delivery. That was fine with me, as I could use the time to decompress. Armed with a cup of steaming coffee fresh from my Keurig, I sat in my recliner and turned on the television to catch up on the news. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed, and I saw it was a call from Ron Wiseman. Curious, I took the call. Mike Jacobs, you old dog. How's it hanging? He asked. I just got back into the house. Exorcised the witch from it, and just kicking back. What do you have for me? Well, you'll be happy to hear I found no links between your wife and the old MMAS, despite her being Pat Witherspoon's daughter. I did, however, find links between the old organization and the lawyer, Allison Cartwright. Oh, I asked, my interest piqued. Yes, it was about 8 or 9 years ago. She went by a different name at the time, Ellen Griswold, worked in upstate New York. According to Witherspoon's notes, she had an issue with some of the more extreme measures the group took against cheaters. She had no problem with punishing the men they targeted, but she apparently felt some of the other actions were too extreme. When the group started going political, she decided to leave. Mona Larson let her go, strangely enough. She left New York, changed her name, and had some cosmetic surgery done. But there's more. I found a memo by Larson in which she considered a hit on Griswold. It never got carried out, since the memo was written just a few days before Larson was taken out, and the contract was never finalized. Very interesting, I said. I thought so as well, Ron said. She may have quit the organization, but she never gave up on the idea of punishing cheating husbands, though. For the last 8 years, she's been with Hempstead, handling divorce cases. So far, she's only represented women. I'm doing a deep dive into those cases, but it seems that nearly 90% of them involve infidelity. How many cases has she handled so far? I asked. On average, she's taken on about 80 cases a year. Do the math. 80 cases a year for 8 years. That's 640 cases, Ron said. Give or take. There's more. I found her name connected to about 500 bank accounts across the country. I'm still looking into all those, but it seems she can lay her hands on about $25 million total. Damn, I said. Yeah, and guess what? Those accounts happen to have been set up by her for the women she's represented. Samantha has such an account, set up when she divorced her first husband. Have you given this information to the district attorney? I asked. Yes, I just got off the phone with him. Our own DIU will be looking into it as well. What is that? Oh, that's right. That was set up after you left. Divorce Investigation Unit. Your old buddy, Ray Ochoa, runs it. I expect you might be getting a visit from one of his people in a day or two. Thanks for the heads up, I said. This actually explained quite a bit. I couldn't help but wonder what the DA would do with this information. Is there anything else? Not at this time, Ron replied. I'm still gathering and collating data. It could take a while for all of this to get pieced together. She's had 8 years to set this up. There's something I don't understand, though, I told Ron. Why didn't Larson use the old poison capsule on her? Isn't that how she always handled loose ends? Yes, it was, at least toward the end. However, Griswold left the organization before Larson began implementing that on a wide scale. So she never got implanted. Or at least, that's what I gathered from Witherspoon's notes. Do you think Samantha knew about Cartwright's history? I asked. I doubt it, Mike, but I'm pretty certain she knew what Cartwright is currently doing. She had to. You're probably right. Anything else? I have a feeling I'm just scraping the tip of the Cartwright iceberg here, Mike. I'll know a lot more over the next 24 to 48 hours. Okay. Well, thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. How's everything with you and Amy, by the way? I asked. We're doing great. Thanks for asking. Her knife-throwing skills are improving with every executive her company hires in, Ron joked. I laughed at that. I'll bet they are, I quipped. But on the upside, the number of sexual harassment complaints have tapered off to nearly nothing, Ron said, half joking. We ended the call, and I turned back to the television. Before long, my dinner arrived, and I enjoyed my lasagna as I watched an old John Wayne movie. I followed that up with a drink and a cigar. I suppose this is where guys in my situation wax philosophic about life, love, and the meaning of the universe, which, as I recall from the old movie, is 42. Or something like that. Yes, I'm sad and deeply hurt, but I'm not made like that. I'm pretty much a just the facts, ma'am kind of person. So here are the facts. The bottom line is that Samantha cheated on me, then tried to set me up as the bad guy, going so far as to hook up with a lawyer with no ethics. Then she tried to steal my house and most of my assets on the basis of fabricated evidence. And to make matters worse, she went along with Allison's idea of having me killed if I didn't go along with their plot. On top of that, I learned that she had done this to another man. She was successful in that case, and I suppose she thought she would succeed with me. But she screwed up big time. You see, I don't like to lose an argument. I suppose I could have done a background check before we got married. But when you're in love with a woman, you don't think of such things. And yes, I was in love with Samantha at one time. I trusted her, perhaps too much. But that's neither here nor there anymore. Samantha screwed up, big time. And now, she needs to pay the piper. Perhaps, I thought, there really was something of her birth mother in her after all. I remember telling Allison they had declared war. The first part of my counteroffensive was complete. The restraining order has been lifted. The freeze on my accounts have been released, and I'm back where I belong, in my own home. Samantha has been exorcised from my personal kingdom, and now sits in jail. I intended to do whatever I could to keep her there as long as humanly possible, along with her 2 co-conspirators. Tomorrow morning, I thought, was phase 2 of the counteroffensive. I would be at her arraignment, and if the district attorney calls on me to answer questions, I'll be more than happy to tell the court what I knew. Having finished my cigar, I headed upstairs, undressed, and crawled under the covers of the bed in my guest room. It felt good to be home again, and in my own bed, even if it is in the guest bedroom. But the place sure seemed empty without Samantha. I put that thought aside and decided to approach this like I would an intervention, which meant setting aside my emotions. Tomorrow is another day, but from this point on, I would be in control. And I don't like to lose an argument. The following morning, I got up, did my business, dressed, and grabbed a cup of coffee before heading to the courthouse. I wanted to see the 3 conspirators as they were brought into the courtroom. I was surprised to see Alice, my lawyer, show up in the courtroom. "How are you holding up, Mike?" she asked. "Better, now that I'm back in my own house." "That's good to hear. I wanted to be here to support you, just in case," Alice told me. "I appreciate that," I responded with a smile. The double doors opened, and a line of orange-clad detainees was marched into the room. Allison, Samantha, and Alan were among them, and they didn't look too happy. Tough shit, I thought. Samantha's hair was a wreck, and she had bags under her eyes. Allison didn't look much better. "All rise," the large uniformed bailiff commanded. We stood up as the Honorable Wilfred T. Stone entered the courtroom in his long black robe, files under his arms. The judge nodded as he sat down, giving the bailiff his cue. "Be seated," he ordered. Judge Stone began at one end of the line, and I couldn't help but notice that he was pretty harsh with the orange-clad people in front of him. It seems the word bail was foreign to him. Before he got to Samantha and her 3 cronies, however, a sharply dressed man and a woman I hadn't seen in 10 years entered the courtroom and approached the district attorney. I recognized the man, U.S. Attorney Ronald Sharp. I had dealt with him before when I was in the service. The woman was Julie Bascom, who was stationed at the task force's Denver office when I was on active duty. I had worked with her a few times and was quite impressed. On top of that, she was a lovely brunette, and I was impressed with how she maintained herself over the years. While Ronald spoke with the district attorney, Julie made her way to me, and I couldn't help but smile when she got to us and extended her hand. "Mike, it's good to see you again," Julie said with a smile. "I'm sorry, Special Agent Julie Bascom, HFSDF," Julie told Alice while holding her credentials. "I'm with the DIU, the Divorce Investigation Unit. Can we step out for a second?" Sure," Alice said. We stood and left the courtroom before Judge Stone could order us out. Ron was still talking with the DA, and I could tell the DA wasn't happy. "What's going on?" I asked Julie. "There's been some developments," Julie said. "As of now, The feds are taking over the case against Allison Cartwright, Alan Williams, and your wife. So this is a task force issue then? I asked. Not entirely, Julie said. The FBI and a few other agencies are working this case. But we do have a dog in this hunt. I spoke to Ron Wiseman earlier, and he indicated there wasn't anything for the task force. What happened? I asked, confused. He found some disturbing things after the two of you spoke, handed them off to us, and we took it from there. You can probably figure out what happened after that. Anyway, it turns out that Allison was running her own little version of the old MMAS, and Samantha was helping her. Damn, what's William's role in all this? I asked. He was along for the ride, mostly. Arranged for the muscle to do the dirty work, if you will, Julie said. So what happens now? Alice asked. Federal marshals are prepared to take all three of them into custody. They'll be transported to D.C. while the federal grand jury examines the cases against them, Julie said. What are they being charged with? I asked. A whole slew of charges. Racketeering, extortion, money laundering, several conspiracy charges, including conspiracy to murder you, for starters. But the biggest charge is murder. It seems Allison had some of her uncooperative marks taken out. And from what we can tell, Samantha knew all about it. All in all, it's a pretty convoluted case. What about Williams? I asked. Evidence we gathered indicates he arranged for the accidents that left two men dead, Julie stated. And it appears there may be a third man dead, thanks to Williams. The U.S. attorney wants the death penalty for all three of them. Do you think it might be possible to see Mrs. Jacobs before they're taken away? Alice asked. I have a set of divorce papers to give her. I'll see what I can do, Julie told her before looking at me. Don't have to report back to Fort Apache for a couple of days, Mike. Do you think we could maybe get together sometime? I got her hint. We had connected the few times we had been together before and shared a mutual attraction. Still, the task force had strict rules against field agents dating. As a matter of fact, I believe I owe you a dinner, I said. That's right, you do, Julie said with a slight smile. How about tonight then? Luigi's? They make a killer lasagna, I hinted. And after all these years, you still remember how much I love lasagna? She asked. Of course, I told her. Julie smiled as she wrote something on the back of a business card she handed me. Here's my personal cell and my current location. How does 6:30 p.m. sound? I'll be there, I told her, pocketing the card. Well, I guess we'd better get back inside, Alice said. We went back into the courtroom and saw Ron, the district attorney, and the lawyer for the three conspirators in discussion with the judge. We took our old seats, and Julie walked to the two large federal marshals and engaged them in quiet conversation. I saw them look at each other, shrug their shoulders, and nod their heads. I just spoke to the marshals. They said you can meet with Julie for a few minutes before they take them away, Julie whispered when she returned to us. I thanked her just as the confab at the judge's bench broke up, and Judge Stone pounded his gavel before speaking. Detainees Jacobs, Cartwright, and Williams. You are hereby ordered to surrender to federal marshals, who will transport you to Washington, D.C., where you will be detained until a federal grand jury completes its investigation, he said. He nodded at the bailiff, who unshackled the three conspirators from the rest. The two marshals immediately cuffed them and led them away, nodding at Julie. Come on, Julie said, standing up. Alice and I followed and met the marshals outside a small room behind the courtroom. 5 minutes, one of the marshals said. Allison and Alan looked down at the floor, cuffed hands behind their backs. That's all we need, Alice said. Thank you. We went inside the room and found Samantha sitting at a table, her hands cuffed to a metal bar on the table. One of her colleagues from Hempstead sat next to her. Samantha looked up as we walked inside. Hello, Samantha, I said. I hope you're enjoying your little adventure. Screw you, Samantha said quietly. I chuckled in response. Not today, Samantha. Never again, in fact, I said. What do you want? The man next to her asked. You must be her attorney, Alice said. Yes. John Ashcroft, Hempstead Law Group. Well, Mr. Ashcroft, I'm Alice Hawkins, Mr. Jacobs' attorney, and I'm here to serve divorce papers on your client. Do what you came to do, John said. Alice turned to Samantha and dropped the papers on the table. Samantha Jacobs, you have been served, Alice said. Yeah, whatever, Samantha said. John picked up the papers and looked through them. This is my client's response to the outrageous and illegal petition your client had served on him, based on totally fabricated evidence put forward by an unethical attorney who is now facing multiple felony charges, including extortion and conspiracy to commit murder. I have requested the court reject her petition. You should advise your client to sign the papers now. Everything is in accordance with the prenuptial agreement your client signed before her marriage. There is also the matter of funds your client stole from the joint account. Those funds need to be returned immediately, otherwise I'll be forced to charge your client with theft. Here is a copy of the order demanding the return of those funds, if you haven't seen it already. With that, she dropped another paper on the table, which John picked up and read. Mrs. Jacobs has given me power of attorney over her affairs, so I will take care of this as soon as possible, Ms. Hawkins. Is there anything else? Yes, I interjected, looking at Samantha. Why, Sam? What the hell happened? Samantha looked up at me, and I swear she looked like a totally different person from the woman I married. She shrugged her shoulders. Because I could, she said. So what? So what? Is that all you have to say after all the years we had together? Yeah, Samantha deadpanned. I guess so. I nodded my head as her words sunk in. Then I realized that whatever love I may have had for her at one time was now completely gone. Her lawyer spoke up. I think our business here is concluded, Mr. Jacobs. My client has no desire to say any more, he said. You realize she's facing a potential death penalty? I asked him. Yes, I'm aware of that fact, Mr. Jacobs, John said. I looked at Samantha and saw a smirk as if she didn't care. Fine, I thought. Neither do I. Good luck, I said, motioning for Alice to leave. We went back into the hallway, and I came face to face with Allison, who also had a smirk. What's so funny? I asked her. She snorted before speaking. You just wait, Mike Jacobs. There's a whole new way coming. And when the sisterhood takes power, there'll be no room for dinosaurs like you, she sneered. I looked at Julie, who also picked up on Allison's statement. Well, from where I stand, it looks like there'll be no room for you either. Like I told you before, I don't like to lose an argument, I shot back. The door to the room opened, and Samantha returned with her attorney and the other marshal. John handed the divorce papers to Alice. They're signed, he said quietly. The marshal witnessed her signature, and I've notarized the papers. File them and get me a copy, if you would please. Consider it done, Alice said as she looked the paperwork over. Thank you. She put the package in her case, and we went our separate ways. Alice filed the paperwork, and Julie returned to the courtroom to meet with Ron, but not before reminding me of our dinner date. I left the courthouse and headed out, stopping to grab a burger. After my meal, I stopped at a mattress store and ordered a new mattress, one that could be adjusted. After I got home, I called Pop to let him know what had happened. What's going to happen to her? My father-in-law asked. I could hear the sadness and disappointment in his voice. No matter what Samantha had done, I liked and respected the old guy. He deserved to know the whole truth, but I was concerned it might be too much for him to take. It's all right. I can handle it, whatever it is. The U.S. attorney wants the death penalty, I said. I heard Pop sniffle as he fought to gain control of his emotions. Do you think they'll get it? Pop asked, his voice shaking. I don't know. I haven't seen the evidence, but from what I've been told, it doesn't look good for any of them. She's my only child, you know, Pop said quietly. I know. Does she have a good attorney? Those feds can really tear someone apart. I think her firm has that covered, I told him. Tell me something, honestly. Is this what you want for her? Pop asked. Honestly, I just want her out of my life, and I want her to pay for whatever crimes she committed, but I don't want her dead. Thank you for that, son, Pop said. What are you going to do? I plan to move on, Pop. I'll probably get called to testify. Of course, I'll tell the truth. Let the chips fall where they may. From what I've seen, Samantha has a lot to answer for. That will be up to the jury. I understand, Pop said. We talked for a while, ending the call somewhat happier note. To be honest, I want my ex-wife to live as I have plans for her. Death would be an escape. After that, I called Luigi's and reserved a table for two for that night. I wasn't sure what to expect from my date with Julie. We had connected years ago when I was a federal agent. Still, nothing physical came from it as we were bound by task force regulations. I had wondered what she would be like in bed more than once. I got to Julie's hotel and called to let her know I had arrived and was on my way to her room. I was flabbergasted when she opened the door. Julie's long wavy hair cascaded over her bare shoulders. She wore a short black dress that accentuated her curves quite nicely. This was the first time I had seen her in something besides a dark pantsuit, and I was stunned at her beauty. Cat got your tongue, Mike? Julie asked with a mischievous smile. You're absolutely gorgeous, I stammered, feeling like a giddy teenage boy on a first date. Thank you, Julie replied. And I must say that you clean up rather nicely yourself. I offered her my right arm as I needed the left for my cane. She accepted, and we walked to my car. Being the gentleman I am, I even held the car door open for her. "This is a very nice car, Mike," Julie said when I got in. "Thank you. The benefits of being an executive. Wait until you hear the sound system. You still like Jethro Tull?" Julie asked. "You even have to ask such a silly question?" I responded. "Listen to this." I fired up the system and heard the sounds of thick as a brick. Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorites. The thing is, I knew Julie also liked Tull, or at least she did the last time I saw her. So where the hell was Biggles when you needed him last Saturday? And where were all the sportsmen who always pulled you through? They're all resting down in Cornwall, writing up their memoirs for a paperback edition of the Boy Scout Manual. "Oh, you certainly know the way to my heart, Mike," Julie exclaimed. "That's one of my favorites. There's much more where that comes from," I told her as I drove out of the parking lot. We got to Luigi's, and I happily escorted Julie through the door. "Table for two, Jacobs," I told the girl at the front desk. "Right this way, please," she said with a smile after confirming my reservation. We followed the girl to our table, and I was pleased to observe that it wasn't the same table where I had been recently ambushed by Samantha's lawyer. I could also see the jealous stares of the men in the restaurant as Julie accompanied me, our arms locked together. I thought Julie was the prettiest girl in the place. Tonight, she's with me. I held the chair for Julie, then took my seat, leaning my cane against the wall directly beside me. A waitress came by with 2 glasses of water and took our orders. "You seem to get around pretty good, even with that cane," Julie said after the waitress left. "Thank you. I've had lots of practice over the years," I told her. "Does it still bother you? I know they did a lot of work on that leg. Sometimes, if it gets really cold outside, or if it starts raining, I still can't put all my weight on that knee." I appreciated Julie's concern, but I wanted to change the subject. "How have you been? You were in Denver the last time I saw you." "Yes, I was. I got transferred to the Seattle office. Stayed there about 3 years, then got moved to Miami. That was a wild assignment. Then I got picked for the DIU. And that's where I've been ever since," Julie said. "How do you like working for Ray?" I had known Ray Ochoa for a long time and always thought well of the man. "I love working with Ray," Julie exclaimed. "I especially like that he's not a micromanager. I worked with someone like that once, and it really pissed me off." I chuckled at that. "I know what you mean. So, what's the deal with this DIU? I don't recall anything like that when I was in the service." "Divorce Investigation Unit," Julie explained. "It's fairly new, set up after the incident with President Pierce. Basically, we investigate the more extreme claims of spousal abuse and infidelity to see if there's any evidence to indicate involvement of MMAS holdovers or copycats." "Must keep you pretty busy," I observed. "Unfortunately, it does. A lot busier than I would like," Julie said sadly. "Just curious, how many of your cases return positive results?" Julie asked, finishing my thought. "Not many. On average, about 2%. That's still a lot more than we'd like to see. I must say your case was quite interesting." "Oh? How?" "None of the usual markers were there. But the fact that your soon-to-be ex-wife is the offspring of perhaps the most notorious field operative who ever worked for MMAS, and that your wife's attorney was a former member of the group caught our attention quickly. Of course, I can't tell you much more than that because it's been turned over to the federal grand jury, but I can tell you that Wiseman and his research team uncovered quite a bit. And it looks pretty bad for all 3 of them. Your man, Torres, also uncovered a few things that really helped out as well. I'm glad he could help. I take it his findings have already been handed over to the appropriate authorities." "Yes, they have. And he's been advised not to reveal everything he's learned. National security and all that. So please, don't be too hard on him." "I won't. Terry is a good man. I trust him. But thanks for letting me know." "You're welcome," Julie said. "So, what's this talk about a new way and a sisterhood?" I asked, recalling the conversation with Allison and Samantha earlier. "You caught that," Julie responded. "Well, after the old MMAS corporate structure was brought down, the organization morphed, went global, became even more radical and less inhibited about things like murder. There was a county commissioner in Texas who was murdered not too long ago, as part of an experiment." "Damn," I shuddered. "We still don't know if those terms are the group's new names, or just generic terms they use. Could be both for all we know. The bottom line is they're a lot more dangerous now than they were when you were in the service. You need to be very careful." "Careful is my middle name," I quipped, causing her to chuckle. Just then, our orders had arrived. We both opted for Luigi's special lasagna, one of my favorites, dripping with 3 different kinds of cheese and loaded to the gills with meat and mushrooms. We both dug in, using our breadsticks to soak up the leftover sauce. "This is absolutely delicious," Julie exclaimed. "It's one of my favorites. I can make myself sick on this stuff." "I can see why," Julie stated. "By the way, there's a nice little dance club next door. When we're done here, would you like to go have something to drink and maybe dance off a couple of calories?" I asked. "Why, Mike Jacobs, if I didn't know any better, I'd think you're trying to seduce me," Julie said with a laugh. "What, me?" I responded, feigning indignance. "Yes, you. But for the record, I'd love to have a drink and a dance or two with you. That is, if you can keep up with me." "Well, I admit, I'm restricted to slow dances these days," I teased. Julie's smile widened, and I took in her dimples. God, I could get lost in those dimples. "How do you manage with?" "I learned a long time ago to improvise, adapt, overcome," I told her. "In that case, I'd definitely love a couple of nice slow dances with you, Mike," Julie said in a sultry tone that held a lot of promise. Our waitress came with the check, so I handed her my credit card, and she returned a few minutes later to wrap things up. After I finished with the bill, we headed out and walked to the dance club, which wasn't too busy, fortunately. Julie turned heads when she walked in, and I could almost hear the murmurs of the men in the place as they sized up my date. Naturally, none even suspected what Julie could do to them should they get out of line. We took a table and ordered our drinks. When the band started playing a slow dance song, I asked Julie for a dance, which she readily accepted. We made our way to the dance floor, and I wrapped my right arm around her while holding my cane in my left hand. Julie melded her body into mine as we worked our way around the dance floor. Slow and steady was the trick. "You are amazingly light on your feet, Mike," Julie whispered as I held her close. I took in the scent of her hair as she placed her head on my shoulder. "Where there's a will, there's a way," I whispered back. We danced through 2 slow songs and then returned to our table. "That was nice," Julie said quietly when I sat down. "I never thought of you as a dancer before." "Well, things have changed a bit over the years. I've personally found it helped me considerably during my therapy. Did you and Samantha come here often?" "I try to make it a weekly thing at least, but to be honest, the last few months were pretty rough. She had been rather cold and standoffish for quite a while. At the time, I thought it was just stress from work. Now I know better," I said. "Enough of my troubles. How have you been? Met Mr. Right yet?" "Not hardly," Julie said with a chuckle. "I don't know. Maybe it's the job that does it to people like us. We see so much hurt and pain. Not exactly the best environment for a relationship." "I know what you mean," I acknowledged. "I did meet someone once," Julie said wistfully, "but he turned out to be a jackass. A player. I dropped him and never looked back." "I'm sorry to hear that," I told her. "Don't be," Julie scoffed. "I'm just glad I found out before it was too late." "Yeah. So what are your plans now?" "I intend to stay with the task force. I'll be looking to retire in a couple of years or so. Thought I'd maybe get a condo on the beach somewhere and share it with a cat or something." "That's a hell of a commentary, isn't it?" "I suppose so," Julie said. I could see the sadness on her face, and I changed the subject, hoping to lift her spirits a bit. "What do you say we blow this joint? Maybe take in some music or something?" "You still have that collection of Tull?" Julie asked. "As a matter of fact, I do," I told her. "I've even added to it since the last time we saw each other." "Well, what are you waiting for? Please, take me to your parlor, kind sir," Julie drawled as she draped her arms over my shoulders. "Where did that come from?" I asked, surprised. "From a book I read online," Julie answered. "Are we going? Or what?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, grabbing my cane. After paying our tab, we left the club and headed to my place. When we got there, I gave Julie the nickel tour of the place, which ended in my office where I kept my stash of Tull vinyl. I don't care what anyone says. Nothing compares to the music on those old records. I let Julie pick which album she wanted to hear and was a bit surprised when she selected A Passion Play. I fired up my stereo and placed the album on the turntable. We headed to the front room as the music filled the house. After pouring a couple of glasses of wine, we sat on the couch and listened to the music. I turned the album over to play side 2 when the first side finished. Julie got a kick out of the story of the hare who lost his spectacles and giggled uncontrollably when I returned to the front room. Julie was still giggling as the story concluded. And after all, hare did have a spare a pair. A pair. What's so funny? I asked as the music continued. I don't know why, but that story cracks me up every time I hear it, Julie said. She set her wine glass down and turned to me. Unbuttoning my shirt, She ran her hand over my chest while staring intently into my eyes. Mike, did you ever wonder? She never finished her sentence. That's because our lips had come together in the hottest kiss I had ever experienced. Even with Samantha, our tongues wrestled for what seemed like forever. She broke the kiss and looked at me. Yes, many times, I whispered. Julie climbed over me and straddled my legs, lifting her short dress up to her waist. She wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me again. She broke the kiss and whispered in my ear. Make love to me, Mike, she hissed. Please. She didn't need to coax me any further. The next thing I knew, clothes were flying off both of us, and it was wild. We lay there on the couch, drained, for just a few moments. We looked into each other's faces as the intensity of our coupling slowly faded. I think the song is about finished, Julie finally said. I listened and realized she was right. There was a rush along the Fulham Road into the ever-passion play. I believe you're right, I said. I guess that makes this our song? Julie smiled back. Yes, our song, she said with a smile. Why don't you put on another album? Okay, I said as she kissed my face. She climbed off my lap, and I managed to stand with the help of my cane. I swapped a passion play with live, bursting out, and went back into the front room, where I collapsed on the couch. Julie's eyes were drawn to the scar on my thigh. You okay? I asked. I'm more than okay, she said. It's just, I've never seen your scar before. That's worse than I thought. It's a lot better now, I said. If it bothers you, I can put my trousers back on. No, don't, Julie pleaded. It's part of you. I'm not bothered by it. I've got a few scars of my own, you know? To me, Julie looked perfect, but looking closer, I could see a few reddish lines on her torso. That happened in Seattle. A knife fight. You should see the other person. Does it bother you? Not at all, I told her. You're perfect just as you are. I hesitated for just a second before asking my next question. Would you like to, stay the night? Her smile lit up the room. I thought you'd never ask, Julie said as she wrapped her arms around me. We went upstairs, leaving our clothes in the front room. I hope you don't mind if we use the guest bedroom. I have a new mattress coming for the master bedroom. That explains the box springs, Julie said. I thought maybe you had some kind of weird fetish or something. We both laughed at that. We climbed into the guest bed and snuggled for a while. I really enjoyed our time together. You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that with you. Really? I'm glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it myself. To tell you the truth, I never wanted it to end. Julie smiled before kissing me. Then we fell asleep in each other's arms. I woke up the following day to the smell of bacon. After doing my business in the master bathroom, I threw on some casual clothes. I went downstairs to see Julie in the kitchen dressed only in one of my long-sleeve shirts. Good morning, sleepyhead. She smiled as she handed me a cup of coffee. Breakfast is about finished. You're going to spoil me. You know that? I asked before giving her a kiss. Isn't that the idea? She responded. I smiled at that. She returned and brought 2 plates with eggs, bacon, and toast. She handed me one and set the other down in front of her. This is delicious, I said after taking a bite of the eggs. Thank you, Julie said. Kinda hard to screw up an egg, though. Maybe, I said. Or maybe it's the fact that you cooked it when you didn't have to. Thank you for last night, Julie said with a hint of sadness. I really needed that. I think we both did, I told her. That was the best night I've had in a very long time. I wished it would never end. But I know you've got a job to do. I understand. Yes, I do have work I need to finish. But Fort Apache isn't that far away. We always have weekends. Besides, I'll be retiring in a couple years. That'll give us some time to get to know each other a bit better. What do you think? I'd like that, I told her. I really felt a connection last night that I haven't felt with Samantha in a long time. And I want to make sure this wasn't just 2 ships passing in the night. I concur, Julie said. I want you to know that I don't make it a habit of spending the night, well, like we did last night. I've been attracted to you for a long time, and I've been attracted to you as well. Is there a but I'm hearing in your voice? I don't want to be a rebound relationship for you, Mike. You're just starting your divorce. You have a long road ahead of you. Trust me, I've seen what divorce does to people. It's not pretty, but I'll be here for you anytime you need me. Thank you for that, I told her, trying to keep a neutral tone. Why don't we take it slow and easy for a while? I'll come out and spend the weekends with you if you want. If you need to talk, call me anytime. There's no need to rush, and before you ask, no, I don't have a boyfriend anywhere else. I knew what Julie said made sense and mulled it over for a few moments before responding. All right, I said. You're welcome here anytime. And of course, I want to see you on the weekends. You realize I may have to work some weekends, right? Oh yes, I know that all too well. Been there, done that, remember? Julie chuckled at that. I'll never forget, she said, but I do have to get dressed. I have to meet the U.S. attorney this afternoon, and I don't think he'd appreciate me showing up like this, Julie added, holding open the shirt. I smiled at that. I don't know. I rather like seeing you dressed that way, especially at my table. I laughed, causing Julie to smile. You're so naughty, Julie chided. Yes, I am, I joked back. We kissed and hugged each other for a few moments before Julie stood, gathered her clothes from the living room, and headed upstairs. I watched her cute little bare hips sway under my shirt with a smile, then cleared the table and cleaned up the dishes. Julie came back downstairs a half hour later, dressed and ready to return to her hotel, so I grabbed my keys, and she followed me to the car. When we got to the hotel, she leaned over and gave me another scorching hot kiss full of promise. What do you want for dinner tonight? I asked. Surprise me, Julie said, smiling. I have to fly back to Fort Apache tomorrow morning. Think you can stand to have me around one more night? I think I can manage that. I'll just have to tell my other girlfriends I've got a date, though, I quipped. Yeah, right, she said, slapping my arm. I'll call when I'm done, all right? Sounds good. By the way, you might as well have this, I said, handing Julie a key to the house. I also pulled out a card with the security code to the alarm. This is the code for the security alarm. Once you open the door, you have just under a minute to enter the code. Thank you for that, Julie said, taking the card. She gave me one more kiss that held a lot of promise, then exited the car and closed the door. I waited until Julie was in the hotel, then left and drove to the office. What, are we working casual today? And no one told me? Jack asked when I walked into the executive office suite. I laughed as I walked into his office. You sure seem to be in a better mood today. I take it everything is going okay? Yes, it is, I replied. In more ways than one. By the way, have you seen Terry? I need to talk to him. I haven't seen him, but I'm sure he's around here somewhere, Jack said. I'll call him then. No big deal. How did the arraignment go? Better than I hoped. Samantha and her co-conspirators are now in federal custody and on their way to Washington. Seems they're being investigated by a federal grand jury. Interesting, Jack said. So, are you back for good now? I think I'll be good to go from here on. I do have a date tonight, though. A date? You sure do move fast, Mike. Who is she? Her name is Julie Bascom. We were in the service together. She's retiring in a couple of years or so. Well, you enjoy your date then. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, Jack joked. I laughed at that. Yeah, right, I said before heading to my office. When I got there, I called Terry. Hey boss, I was just getting ready to come see you. Everything all right? I asked. Yeah, I just wanted to give you my final report. I look forward to that. I'll be there in about 5 minutes, Terry said before ending the call. True to his word, Terry came into my office 4 minutes later carrying a fairly thick folder, which he handed to me. Wow, you have been busy, I told him as I hefted the heavy folder. I take it you provided a copy of this to the feds and Ms. Hawkins? Yes, Terry said. That Special Agent Bascom seemed quite pleased to get it. You already know much of what's in that report. I got a full file on that Williams character and on Morrison's divorce from Samantha. It wasn't pretty. Did you forward a copy to Williams' wife in New York? I asked. Not yet, but I will if you want. Please do, I instructed. Consider it done, Terry said. Anything on the photos? Yeah, I spoke to my audio-video guy. He agrees those appear to be printouts from digital images that have been photoshopped. Couldn't say much more than that without seeing the original digital files, though. That makes sense, I reasoned. Anyway, it's all there. Everything I could dig up in just a couple days. Hope it helps. Yes, Terry, it does, I said. Nice work. Thanks. I owe you big time. My pleasure, boss, Terry responded with a smile. Well, I have to get back to it. Let me know if there's anything else you need. Will do, Terry, I told him. We shook hands, and I watched as he left the office. I spent the next couple of hours looking through the package Terry put together and wondered if I ever really knew Samantha. I finally closed the folder and tossed it on my desk. It was all academic now, I thought, as it was in the hands of the grand jury. I caught up with the rest of my work and realized it was lunchtime, so I headed out to grab a sandwich. While I was out, I planned the evening meal I would share with Julie, and I wanted to do something special for her. At first, I considered taking her out to that new steakhouse, but I had a change of heart and decided to grill a steak for her instead. After lunch, I returned to the office and checked in with Jack. "If you don't mind, Jack, I'd like to head out a bit early. I need to stop at the store on my way home," I said. "Yeah, sure, Mike," Jack said. "We got everything under control here." "Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that." With a wave, I left and stopped at the store, where I grabbed a couple of thick steaks, potatoes, and all the fixings. I also grabbed a bottle of wine, then headed home. My phone buzzed as I was preparing the meat, and I saw it was Julie, so I took the call. "Hey, G-Man," she said when I answered. It had been a while since I heard that, and I couldn't help but smile. "Hey yourself," I responded. "How's your day so far?" "Interesting," Julie said. "I called to see what you had in mind for dinner." "I'm in the process of preparing a couple steaks. I thought I'd grill us some steaks and a couple baked potatoes with green beans. How does that sound?" "Meat. Yes," Julie exclaimed. "I'd love a home-grilled steak." "Your wish is my command," I jokingly said. "So, any news?" "Yeah, I'll tell you when I see you tonight." "I look forward to that. I just have to stop at the hotel to change, pack up and check out." "That is, assuming you still want me to spend the night," Julie whispered. "Of course," I said. "All right then. I'll see you in a bit." We said our goodbyes and ended the call. I returned to my preparations, a smile on my face, as the words of a favorite tune played on the house stereo. "Oh, the leaded window opened, but you moved the dancing candle flame, and the first moths of summer. Suicidal came, oh suicidal came." I had just finished all the preparations when the doorbell rang. Answering it, I saw Julie with a clothes bag and an overnight bag, so I invited her inside. "You know, you don't need to ring the doorbell." "I appreciate that, Mike," Julie said as she entered. "Oh, I can smell that barbecue already. I haven't put the meat on yet. I wanted to wait till you got here. How do you like yours, by the way?" "Rare. I mean, so rare that it practically moves." "A woman after my own heart," I quipped. "Let me go put this stuff upstairs and I'll be right out," Julie said. "Need any help with that?" "I got it, but thank you for offering anyway," Julie answered as she went up the stairs. I went out, put the food on the grill, and then opened the wine. Julie came back down, put an arm around my waist, and kissed me on the cheek. I felt more love in that small act than I had felt from Samantha in a long time. The food ready, I grabbed a couple of plates and loaded them with the steaks and potatoes. We went into the kitchen, spooned some green beans, and then loaded the potatoes with butter and sour cream. "This smells so delicious, Mike," Julie said. "I hope you like it," I told her. "Been a while since I grilled anything. I'm sure I'll love it. Been a long time since I had a man cook a meal for me. Next time, I'll take kitchen duty, okay?" "You're on," I responded. I watched as she took her first bite of steak. She closed her eyes and moaned as she ate her food. "This is divine, Mike. Perfect. Thank you for saying so." We ate our food, engaging in small talk. When we finished, Julie insisted on cleaning up the dishes, so I let her. Then we retired to the front room with a glass of wine. "So, anything interesting happened today?" I asked after we settled down on the couch. "Yes, actually, we went over the evidence from Cartwright's house." She saw the look on my face. I figured they would execute a search warrant, but I wasn't aware that it had already been done. I probably should have told you. The FBI searched her place the day after the arrest. Found an awful lot. Oh, for starters, they found the digital files Cartwright used to make the photos. Believe it or not, she used the same base photos against hundreds of men over the years. "Damn," I said. "You can say that again." We also have information on all of the accounts Cartwright has access to. The funds in all of them have been frozen for the time being. We're talking millions more than we originally thought. "So, she's been running this scam for years," I said. "Yes, with Samantha's help, I might add. And as you thought, William's thumb drive was full of illegal spicy videos, which we also found on Cartwright's computer. It appears to us that she used that along with the faked photos as leverage against her targets. We also found evidence directly linking Cartwright and Williams to at least 3 murders. That, on top of their conspiracy against you. Sounds like they'll be going to prison for a very long time," I added. "Well, if Ron has his way, all 3 of them will get the needle," Julie said. "We just have to wait to see what the grand jury says. It could take months for the investigators to sort all of this out. Maybe a couple of years, based on what I saw." "What about all the men Cartwright screwed over?" I asked. "That's a whole different can of worms," Julie said. "I expect there'll be a judicial review of every divorce Cartwright worked on, and I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of lawsuits filed. Your attorney, Alice, is chomping at the bit over that." I chuckled at that. "I'm sure she is. At any rate, It's going to be a bloodbath, legally speaking. I'd be very surprised if Hempstead survives the fallout, Julie said. So, you've got your work cut out for you the next couple years, then, I take it. Julie nodded her head. Yeah, Ray put me on point, so I'll either be here or at Fort Apache. I'll probably have to go to Washington now and then. At least you won't have to worry about a place to stay when you come here, I told her. Julie smiled and wrapped her arms around my neck. No, I don't. I just hope you don't get tired of having me in your bed. I could never get tired of that, I told her. We took another sip of wine and fell into each other's arms for our second night of lovemaking. My divorce went through without a hitch, as I knew it would. Alice filed a number of lawsuits, and by the time it was all over, more than 600 men, including Alvin, walked away with a nice-sized check. Alice cut her percentage by more than half. Even then, she walked away with enough money to retire. Hempstead nearly went under, what with the bad press and judicial reviews, but managed to survive. As Julie predicted, the federal investigation took 26 months to complete. At the end of the investigation, a federal grand jury handed down several indictments against Samantha, Allison, and Alan for various charges, including premeditated first-degree murder. Ron, the U.S. attorney in charge of the case, sought the death penalty for all three. Julie spent those 26 months commuting between Fort Apache, Washington, D.C., and my house. It was nice having her with me, and our love for each other grew to the point that I asked her to marry me a few days before Samantha's sentencing hearing. I thought you'd never ask, Julie said as I slipped the engagement ring on her finger. We celebrated with a night of unbridled passion. Pop was happy for us, and even happier when Julie asked him to walk her down the aisle. Samantha was given the opportunity to turn against her co-conspirators in exchange for a guilty plea and a life sentence. She wisely accepted, much to Pop's relief. After making the deal, she sang like a canary. As a result, Allison and Alan, who had been cleaned out by his wife in her divorce, were convicted of all charges and sentenced to death. I saw Samantha twice after she was taken to Washington. The first time was during the trial when I was asked to testify. She sat in her chair, her face downcast as I answered the questions put to me. The second time was at the sentencing hearing. Pop and Julie joined me for that trip. Samantha looked like hell the second time I saw her. Her hair, which used to be full and voluminous, was now ratty with streaks of gray. She looked as if she had aged 20 years, and wrinkles lined her face. She looked at me with hatred after her sentence was announced. Happy now, she spit. Actually, I've never been happier, I answered, glancing at Julie. I saw a tear form in Samantha's eye, then she looked down. I glanced at Allison, who looked as worn and tired as Samantha. I told you, I don't like to lose an argument. Allison dropped her head and studied the table in front of her. With a smile, I walked away and started a new chapter in my life. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.